All right, here we go. Good morning, everybody. Today we're talking about the question that we get asked the most as a realtor. My uncle sent me this video over the weekend, and it's with Tom Ferry. It's a great video. It talks about this question that we get asked the most. And I was kind of excited to watch it and also happy to know that some of the stuff that he was talking about in there, I was already implementing in my conversations with the people I talk to on a daily basis. And it's super important to be able to articulate what he's saying. This is usually the first question that you're asked when you're meeting somebody and they find out that you're in real estate. And if you're not able to handle it properly, it could ruin that first impression they have of you. So it's very important. With that being the case, I'm going to share my screen here and I'll start the video and then we'll open it up for a conversation after. All right, that was it. We'll open it up here for discussion. Uncle Tim, do you want to, kick it off here and let us know your thoughts and comments?
Yeah, I think it's a great way to handle that question. Not sure how people have handled that in the past, but throwing it back to them is, what it depends. It's the Jim Goldsmith method. It depends. Are you interested in buying, selling, investing, or renting? And it's true. You know, in order to have great conversations, you got to know what to say. And that gives you the ability to ask them why they're asking, to try to find out. Has anybody experienced this recently where somebody said, "How's the market?" And could they tell us how they handle it? Because there's no one way to handle it. This is just Tom Ferry's way. But I think that it was nice how he did it. It depends. Are you interested in buying, selling, investing, or renting? Are you curious about what your home is worth? That type of thing. Uh, Anybody want to volunteer? Kara, do you get asked that question very often? How's the market? And what do you typically say?
You know what? That's a good eye opener, because we all know that we really should be communicating. And sometimes, if I get asked, it's like, well, it's awesome because truly I think the market's what we make it, right? I
Hmm.
mean, we can thrive in any market. But I think really delving into what they're looking for is more important than just caring about us
Right.
and
As
asking
far
them.
as how it is with us, how is it with the market?
Right, right.
Just to give you an idea of how the market is, Brent, you want to tell us how the market was yesterday for the situation you were involved in?
Um, yeah, quite interesting. And I mean, it's a very long, detailed story, but in short, we wrote an offer on a $530,000 listing. Um, our offer went in at 550 purchase price, and we escalated all the way up to 650. Um, we literally waived the mortgage, waived everything. So it was just like a cash offer, waiving absolutely everything. Um, and got the news yesterday morning that our buyers did not get the offer. And I was dumbfounded. I even made a comment to a bunch of people that, if we don't get this offer, I'm hanging my license because I don't know how much higher to go. I don't know what else to do. I mean, this is a, a, a strong offer as you can get. Um, and she had told me that there was 9 offers total, and we were against one other person, and they actually provided um, true cash. So they wanted to go with the true cash offer. And my rebuttal was ours is the exact same. We went in, our escalation clause was $5,000 over any competing offer. Um, and I said, so, I mean, we waived everything. We are just as true cash. I provided a proof of funds. Um, even though we um, waived the mortgage contingency, obviously what I did do was he is going to get a mortgage. So I did provide that pre-approval to her so they knew that we were going to get a mortgage. But then she asked for proof of funds just because if she does get a mortgage, if there is a gap in appraisal, does he have the money to cover it? I gave her proof of funds. This buyer has $1.8 million that has access, so that's going to more than cover everything. He can pay for cash. She explained all of that to the seller, and they still somehow, some way, they had a bad dealing with an appraiser or appraisal sometime in their lifetime, and they did not want to deal with that. So they went with the all cash offer. That was about 11 a.m. About 4 p.m., I get a phone call from her, and the other agent, she said, hey, in speaking with the other offer, that agent started informing me or called me and said that they are going to start coordinating the home inspection, the termite, the radon, every inspection. They wanted every inspection, and it was just for informational purposes only. And she said, well, wait a second. No, I mean, that was not discussed. That's deceitful. That is, you're trying to change things. That's not what we agreed upon. She talked to her sellers. Her sellers were very upset about this because they tried to work the system. She then came to us and said, listen, we want to move forward with your offer if your buyer is still willing. And I called my buyer. She told me the number. The number was 615 is what it went up to. My buyer was super excited, and we have accepted. So we are $85,000 over the asking price and had to waive everything, but we got the deal.
So what that tells you is, how's the market? The market is great in that $500,000 price range in the Carlisle area, that there were 9 offers on one particular property, and it sold for almost $85,000 over the asking price. So what my point is with this is, as you're making calls and you're talking to your past customers, and a lot of times when you're making these calls and you're talking to your past customers, they will ask, how's the market? Now you can say, well, let me tell you a little story of what just happened in our office. We had somebody that sold a house or listed a house, and it sold for $85,000 over the asking price with 9 offers on it. Are you curious to find out what your property's worth today? And follow it up with a close, because that's how you're going to get business. Contacts equal contracts. And the more people you talk to and the more people you have these discussions with, the better chance you are to get a deal. Now, when Brent first lost this deal yesterday, he was bummed. He was ready to hang his license up yesterday afternoon. And I said to him, he'll tell you, I said to him, Brent, unmute yourself and tell him what I said to you at my desk yesterday afternoon.
He said many things, but one of the biggest things was, he said, listen, a lot could change
Don't be surprised.
in this type of market. Don't be surprised if you do get a phone call, if that buyer somehow, some way gets buyer's remorse and, maybe changes their mind. Or a lot could happen between now and whenever that settlement date is. They could walk away. So don't be surprised if you get a phone call, and about 5 hours later, I got the phone call.
When you have an escalation that goes to that drastic amount over the asking price, it's almost like if you've ever been at an auction or bid at an auction, your emotions get the best of you. And that's why I said to him, don't panic. Something could change, and believe it or not, it did. He called me up, I don't know, 7 o'clock last night and told me he got the deal done, which, good for him. and great for his buyer. But the other thing that I told him was this. I said, Brent, obviously now you understand listings are the name of the game because 8 other people lost yesterday. 8 other people were feeling like Brent felt, that they presented the best offer that they could and they lost out. But the listing agent always wins. So if ever there's a time to focus on listings, the time is right now. And for you, as I say, write notes and I say make phone calls, here's a discussion you could have with your past clients and centers of influence, or even cold calls um, uh, to customers to let them know how the market is. Even if they don't ask you, you can tell them how the market is. Tell them the story. I mean, the day before my father's funeral, I was on the phone with Jim Grandin, and he was telling me how he wrote an offer on a property that was $1 million. And he said he couldn't believe it that there were 6 offers on this property that was $1 million. And it just goes to show it's not just the $500,000 price range, it's the $1 million price range. And we obviously know under $500,000, those properties are continuing to get multiple offers. So we do have a story to tell when it comes to how's the market. And as Jim Goldsmith says, it depends. Are you interested in buying, selling, investing, or renting? Because why in the world would they want to rent? Unless they want to cash out on the prices that are now and rent for a few years until they move to Florida or they move to wherever the grandkids are, where they do something like that. Anybody that's thinking that, hey, in a couple of years from now, I might want to retire and move to Florida. I know a doctor. Unfortunately, I didn't get the listing. I did go to high school with him, but that's what he did. He sold his house up in I can't remember the name of Mumper's development that was up by Rich Valley, Hillside Farms. He sold his house in Hillside Farms. He cashed out now. He bought a smaller home, and his plan is to retire in a couple of years and move south. But you know what he did? He cashed out at the top of the market because maybe we're at the top, maybe we're not. Maybe we're in the middle of the market. Maybe it'll continue to go up. It's certainly not going to go down significantly because we can't buy land any cheaper. We can't buy materials any cheaper to build houses. It's going to continue to go up. So, like I'm saying, we have a story to tell. Kong, anything you want to add to the story? Because one of the things that we did tell Brent in the competitive market that he was in with 9 offers was the importance of, let's talk about, Kong, if you can, the escrow deposit and the amount on the escalation clause, if you could expand on that.
Yeah, the biggest thing listing agents worry about in escalation is, can you cover it, right? Can the buyer cover it? Because obviously we price the house as a list agent at a certain price because of the comps that we are given or we've researched. So whenever you have an escalating number, especially on the buyer end, you have to be able to back that up. You can't just say it's got to appraise for the escalated price now, because I mean, when you have 8 offers like that, that's going to be near impossible. And I think yesterday we were sitting there and we were talking with Brent, and I said, if they're escalating $100,000, they might as well just put that whole amount down just as proof of funds. You know, that will definitely open the eyes of a seller that your buyer is very serious. So that was just a little tidbit that we talked about yesterday, because these deposits that are 1% of the price, they may fly when it's a buyer's market, but in a seller's market, you always want more to show that your client's more serious.
So what was the amount that came out of your mouth when I said about what amount would you have written for a deposit, knowing that there's 9 offers?
The escalated amount, like 130 grand.
Okay. But then how about the difference in the escalation clause because that makes a big difference too as to whether or not somebody's going to take a deal that's got $1,000 more than any other offer, 2,000, 5,000, or 10,000. What do you recommend in
The
this?
increment, Tim.
Yes.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it that's very funny you say that because with people paying transfer tax and doing crazy stuff with commissions now, an increment of $1,000 or $500, that may not do it. That's laughable. You might have to do 1% of the sales price because if you think about it, even if you escalate it on a 500K house, if you escalate it $2,500, right, higher than the next offer, you're $2,500 higher than them. But if they're paying the 1% transfer tax at 500K, that's 5 grand. They're still $2,500 net higher than you. So I almost think you have to go 1% increments.
Okay. And sometimes that makes a huge difference because even these deals that have multiple offers with no contingencies, other than maybe financing, and we just had a situation with an agent in the office yesterday. I think it was yesterday or Friday, where the lender came back that the appraiser made a comment on the appraisal about a swimming pool leak. And in that particular case, now the lender wants this pool fixed. So here the people wrote an offer with no contingencies, no inspections. And now, because this was on the property disclosure, the appraiser picked it up, put a comment on his appraisal, it goes to the lender. Now they have a right to get out of the deal based on financing because of what was written on the disclosure. So, the fact that they take a higher amount or in that escalation clause, they take something that's a little bit higher than somebody else, actually gives them a little bit of fluff money too, that in the event that there's a problem that needs to be addressed, at this point in time, the seller has a little bit extra money to address it or doesn't have the extra money to address it. But in that particular case, it can be addressed by the seller or the buyer, uh, because they need it in order to go through with financing too. So these are just some stories that have happened. Anybody else have anything they'd like to add to how they handle? Shelley, how about you? How do you handle, how's the market? You got to unmute.
There,
There you
I
go.
did it. Well, that was quite interesting, his comment, because I probably don't handle it quite that way. Um, like Kara said, that really makes you think about what you're going to answer now. Certainly changed my mind. When people do ask me that, I do kind of go into a little bit of detail, but not like Tom Ferry just said. So I'm going to be changing some of the things I do because a lot of times it's like, yeah, the market's, doing pretty good, but I don't ever ask them questions. I might go into detail about some stuff that I think, but I don't ask
Right.
them. And that's what I need to be doing now.
Yep. Selling is not telling, it's asking good
Right.
questions. Yep. Yep. Joe Schutz, how do you typically handle house the market? There you go.
So I do generally answer the question similarly, without just an answer. Uh, if someone's, I don't handle it exactly the way he did, but I would ask a question. I would just say, well, why do you ask? And then let them say what it is that why they're asking me the question, and I can answer it more accurately. I like the body, the gestures, the renting, the shaking of the head on the renting, that kind of subliminal thing. That's powerful. I need to incorporate that maybe a little bit more, but by and large, if anybody asks me about real estate or business, I'm not gonna, like there's always that mindset of it's always great. Like there's certain people you ask them, hey, how you doing? And they're like, oh, fantastic. And even though they're full of shit, I want to be honest and truthful and answer their question accurately. So I just don't give a straight answer of great, good, that sort of thing. Um, I would like to just say one other thing here. If you give me a minute, I closed the deal yesterday on a property that I thought I may have overpriced, and I was trying to set the seller up for price reductions, and I got a call from a person who I was having difficulty understanding their language, and then somebody else came on the line and was interpreting for me, and they wanted to see the property, and I said, okay, well, are you working with an agent? And they're like, yeah, I'm working with an agent. Normally, in the past, I may have been like, well, then you need to talk to them. I can't help you. And because you don't have a lot of free extra time. But I decided to probe a little bit, and I said, well, tell me why, I mean, where's your agent? Well, it turns out they were visiting from Bethlehem, and it was a lady whose son lives 5 houses up and loves the community. And all the feedback that I've been getting was overpriced, overpriced, overpriced. You got to lower the price. And so I was preparing my seller for that. And I said, well, you need to have your agent. Well, my agent's in Bethlehem. And I said, okay, well, I'll show you the property. Long story short, they love the property. I got an offer. It was a low offer, not full price. These people came in 5,000 over asking price, and we'll see if it appraises. But I mean, I guess the point I'm trying to make is I'm not going to close two sides of a deal, but I'm getting an overpriced property under contract, and it may or may not close at that price depending on what the appraiser says. And my seller is over the moon about getting an offer 5,000 over asking. So it also helps to probe the inquiries and don't just slough them off as well, if you've got an agent, go work with your agent and not ask them more questions. And I think me asking me questions and taking the time to show them the property helped me close this deal. That's
Good. And I think you're absolutely right about probing and asking more questions in those situations, because they might have had an agent from Bethlehem but maybe they hadn't signed a buyer agency with them yet. In this case, they obviously did because they sent you an offer. But we had somebody else that was dealing with it was actual relative of theirs that went out and looked at a property and made an offer, but never, it was a verbal offer, and claims they never signed a buyer agency. So they really weren't working with that person and were available for our agent then the second time through to get them under a buyer agency agreement. So asking those questions of whether or not they have signed or not is important. But back to house the market and having that dialogue with them, and it depends on whether or not you're looking to buy, sell, invest, or rent. I think the follow-up question to that is the most important to leave today with is, are you curious about what your home's worth in today's market? And to follow up with that question opens the door for whether or not they really are thinking about selling now or in the near future. So, Brooks, anything else you'd like to add to the call?
Um, yeah, one little thing I would add is to me it's pretty important to know the market statistics. If that's not something that you do on a monthly basis, you should probably start doing it because it kind of goes hand in hand with being asked that question. And depending on how analytical that person might be, knowing market statistics and what's going on to the point of like, over the winter, days on market throughout most counties were around 40 some days on market. Now they've trended down a little bit. They're anywhere from high 20s to mid 30s in most instances. Getting into depth and being able to articulate that just proves to them that you're a professional, you're an expert, you know what's going on, you have your finger on the pulse. And, maybe somebody they know that might be their realtor or was their agent in the past. If you're better at explaining the market dynamics and you're the expert, they might go with you. So just use Bright. The market statistical report is what I use to generate those. And I can send out last month's with a recap of this call, but check those out at least monthly.
Okay. Sounds good. Well, everybody, you have a great day. Make some calls, let people know how the market is, and hopefully we'll see you back next week.